Stay in the know with Hydro Radio. Join us daily, Monday to Friday at 13 hours 30 for COVID-19 and Elections Watch with senior journalist Leonard Gildarie and Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Join us as they keep you updated on the latest news on elections 2020 and the COVID-19. COVID-19 and Elections Watch only on Hydro Radio. Hydro Radio, the radio with a difference. It is 13 hours 35 in Guyana and right across the Eastern Caribbean. You're listening to us right here on Kaito Radio, 99.1 FM in Demerara and Essequibo, 99.5 FM in Berbice, online at KaitoNewsOnline.com, via our Facebook page, Kaito Radio, or for quicker access, we encourage you to download the MyTuner app or the Radio Garden app and simply select Kaito Radio. It is the 25th day of May in the year 2020, and we welcome you down to today's edition of the COVID-19 and Elections Watch. Joining us to have that discussion this afternoon is no other than senior journalist of Kaito News, Leonard Gildarie, and he's also joined by Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Gentlemen, a pleasant good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, dear Joshua Van Slightman at the controls, and I want to say good afternoon. It's a very beautiful week, and I look forward to having a very good week. Tomorrow happened to be Independence. The big question on the table, do we have much to celebrate? Is there anything to celebrate? And I want to say good day to my co-host there, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. How are you doing, Yog?
Very well, thank you, Leonard. I'm well, and good afternoon to you and Joshua.
I don't like that, Yog. You sung as if you're tired. You sung as if you're hoarse, overworked. I am not seeing that excitement. What is happening?
Well, after being beaten for 80 odd days, 85, 86, who knows? You know, as a nation, we have all been through. We're wading through this pandemic. We are wading through elections, and it's having its toll. I mean, Leonard, I got a little depressed because this morning, sharing out some food stuff and parcels to various persons, I started to wonder where will the next set come from, because we don't know when this COVID-19 is going to end, and we don't know when help is coming.
Well, these are some of the questions, Yog, that we would have to ask today, because it seems what we've been saying for a little while, for the last couple of weeks, we're definitely not out of the woods yet, and I don't believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and there are a couple of reasons why I'm saying that. But before I do that, I want to wish everybody who's joined us and who have been joining us over the last couple of weeks, yourself and myself here, with the family of Kaito News and Kaito Radio in our studios here. Although you're not in the studio physically, I know that you're with us every single day in the midday at 1:30, and then again in the evening at 7:30 for room 592. And I want to say good day to everybody right across this country here, right across the Caribbean, North America, Europe, wherever you are. Thank you, and I hope that you have a good week. At least let's lift our spirits up. Things are not looking so good, and there's a couple of good reasons about our spirits. We should look ahead. As long as we have life, there's options that is available for us, and there's tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, Yog, is our Independence Day. It is the 54th year anniversary since we would have gained independence from Britain. And we would have to continue looking at ourselves as a country, at our leadership, at the people that we have around us, and ask ourselves, assess ourselves, whether whether we are in a better place, and whether we should continue on the same trend, whether we do need to make changes within ourselves and our environment. And the environment has to do not only with our leadership, but the way we do business. And so it's a very serious day, it's a very serious time. As we speak right now, 135 cases as of yesterday. When it comes to COVID-19, we have 10 deaths and 1,457 tests would have been conducted, but that is not the story. The story has to go to Brazil today, Yog. There's deeply
Mm-hmm.
worrying news with regards to the indigenous people of Brazil. It's a very high death rate there when it comes to COVID-19, and it has direct connection to the people of Guyana, and I would explain that. But in terms of the indigenous people, as we know right now, Brazil is climbing the ladder pretty quickly to a position that it should not be boasting about, and that's a position at the top of the world when it comes to the number of cases. And it's happening because of attitude,
Correct.
the attitude of the leadership of the country, and that comes on from the president of Brazil, who's coming under a lot of flack, not only from the World Health Organization and others, but from people right within his country as to how he would have treated the entire issue of this pandemic, which has gripped the soil. It has crippled the soil, not only financially, but in other ways, so many ways. And we could probably have a discussion on that too, what it has done for trade and the costs of trade. But Yog, the
Mm-hmm.
indigenous people, in terms of the entire Brazil, they're saying that it's like about 12%, I think just over 12% in terms of the infection rate. So that in itself, and they're talking about genocide of the indigenous people. This is what the pandemic is almost what it's equivalent to, and it's almost like genocide to the indigenous people of Brazil. Now, why should we be worried about this entire scenario, Yog? I was looking at it. Our border is with Brazil at the Letem, the Region 9 area, 1,000 miles of it, and it's not properly being monitored for the simple reason we lack the capacity and the resources for that. And people have been coming and going.
Mm-hmm.
The indigenous people of Region 9 have been complaining. I think it's 50 something villages. I have to check it back. They've been complaining that the authorities
Mm-hmm.
should be closing the mining operations. And there's one mining area in Region 9. That is a place called Marudi, the Marudi Mountains. And the authorities are not paying attention. And they are worried because the majority of miners there have given out the concessions to be operated by Brazilian miners. How are they getting across the border
Right.
if the border is closed? They are coming across illegally, unlawfully, on the open borders. We would have had last week on this particular program here the chairman of Region 9, this is Brian Allicock, and he would have indicated to us very, very clearly, look, I don't have the capacity, one, and two, these guys are technologically more advanced than us. When we go to this area, by the time we reach, they are already gone. These people got satellite phones and so on. So you're moving an entire dredge across the border, and the authority doesn't know. Does it speak to our capacity also? But there could also be some level of corruption there that people turn in a blind eye. And that brings
Correct.
into that ties into what is going to happen in a very short while. We're going to have the mayor of Bartica, Yog, and his name is Gilford, Marshal, in at 2 o'clock. And he's going to tell us because Bartica is paying very close attention. You know, Region 7 is the biggest mining area in Guyana. Lots of area that is so populated with gold here. And what we do have happening at the moment is that Bartica is recording several cases when it comes. I think it's about 7 or 8 now. But there are also many cases that is happening in the back dam that we now getting the information on. So in a very short while at 2 o'clock, we're going to make a connection to Mayor Gifford Marshall from Bartica Region 7 there, and he's going to tell us what is happening. But this show is not only but elections 2020. Yoga, it's about COVID and the impact of COVID. So we have many things to discuss today. So let's get
Correct.
right into it. What is happening on the elections front? I know we
Correct.
are in the 20. We have 5 more days before the clock ticks down
Well,
to that mandate, but I think it
let,
would lengthen.
right. Well, Leonard, just before we get to the elections, and top of elections discussion has to be the today's elections in Suriname. Eh? But
Mm-hmm.
before we get to the elections, the situation in Brazil is so dire. I must share this with you. If you look at the statistics coming out there, remember the United States leading the world, excuse me, in the number of total cases. However, put it like this. presently there are 17,000 people that is critical in the United States. In Brazil, 8,000 persons are. So it's 50% of persons, 50% of that number of the US number. Another thing that is interesting is that the number of deaths to cases in the US is about 5%. The number of deaths to cases in Brazil has gone past 6%. So it's a reverse thing happening. And remember, in the US, one could argue there may be some flattening out. There may be the flattening of the curve. In Brazil, there is still on the upward climb. Now, let's put that in context with Guyana here, Leonard, because the porous border you mentioned is extremely important. I have seen that Mr. Ramjatan has announced that the COVID task force may well have to consider locking down Region 9, do a total lockdown in Region 9. Now, here is the argument. Here is the argument I want to put forward to you. The people in quarantine, let's just take quarantine. Quarantine have done two things. One, because of the Surinamese vigilance over the waters, that border is tightly closed. So close that even the people from Oriala cannot travel over the water to come to Corriverton. So that waterway, that border is tightly closed. Quarantine, Corriverton that is, have taken the step ahead, and everybody's wearing masks, the market vendors, the market buyers. You're only allowed to enter the market if you are seen wearing a mask. So there's policing going on. They lock people up. So the argument here, Leonard, if the rest of the country, if Georgetown remains as open as it is, aren't we placing Corriverton, who is very vigilant, at great risk? So those are the kind of things we need to continue to assess. And what can the people of Corriverton do to stop the imported cases from hitting them? Because if I go to Corriverton and I'm in Georgetown here, how would the quarantine or the Corriverton people be assured? So those are some of the paradigms we want to talk about. And the good news, though, is, like we said earlier, persons continue to share hampers, masks, food stuff. It continues to happen, and I want to really give kudos to those teams. I must tell you, Leonard, I've been part of a fantastic group, and as of last weekend gone, we raised $1,000 to feed, do some hampers and so forth in various places. And I would just like to use this opportunity to say thanks to Feroz Khan, who is online part of this show. He has made a magnanimous gesture and given a huge donation to us for the second time around, Leonard.
I thank you very, very much for that, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. But let me tell you, you talking there about what is happening down in, I think, Berbice, and what is happening down in Georgetown. I must bring to the public's attention a couple of incidences over the weekend, that should have us very, very worried. Yesterday at the area behind Marriott there are photographs that are now surfacing of parties going on. And why I say parties, cars parking there, you see people like they're having barbecue or whatever it is, or repairing of cars, but several cars were there. They were playing music and people were hanging out. That should not have been. Why that is so hurtful? Because while we have lockdowns in almost every other area and the police are being called, this is right across from the police headquarters. This is behind a place that's very, very popular. Mm-hmm. Everybody's seen it. This is not some backwater area that is behind God's back. This is right behind Marriott, and this is on a beach that is very, very popular. People passing and see what is happening. So that happened yesterday on Camp Street this morning in front of the Guyana Revenue Authority. There's a big tent there where they screen people before they enter, and you're standing in that line. It was packed to capacity. So while you were trying to minimize the number of persons out inside the building of the Guyana Revenue Authority. And you know that they have a very critical service that they're offering. It has been deemed one of the essential services and one of the facilities that can remain open during this time of restricted movements and so on. And Yog, the people are right next to each other, rubbing shoulders, and like nobody in the full view of the entire public. Camp Street this morning, GRA. If you're listening to us, GRA folks, Mr. Godfrey Sasha, got to do a little better than that. We're paying attention, and that's not good enough.
Well, Leonard,
Right down in Georgetown.
Leonard, I agree with you totally, and I'm sorry to interject. I find it disheartening that our brothers and sisters are allowed to line up in such close proximity to each other at GRA, at some of the other places, in the markets, in plain sight of the police, who a couple of days ago went and arrested people who were protesting standing 6 feet away from each other and observing and wearing masks and observing all the protocols. So, it boggles the mind to find how we're applying the rules under this COVID-19. I'm not saying that the people protesting was right or wrong. That's a political discussion. But my point is, it needs to be applied equitably across the board. And the police are in full view, Leonard.
Well, absolutely, Yog. I was called on Saturday, I think it was, Friday night leading on to Saturday, and I had to intervene. A couple of taxi drivers in Region 2 at the Supernam area there, they're plying the trade. And the police said, come to the station. I think either Saudi or Aurora. And while they were there, they were told to park the car in the compound. And then I asked them, what's the problem? They said that they were accused of soliciting passenger, and that the police told them they're going to keep the car for 4 days and release it this week here. And so they said, they can't understand. If you're soliciting, ticket and let's go home. So I called the commander and I said, Commander, what's happening here? I mean, I could understand ticketable offenses. Aren't we going overboard here? He said, no. The people were not wearing masks, and they were there, and we warned them. And then after that, we decided to teach them a lesson, because a message has to be sent very clearly. And I said, look, see whatever you can, if you got to lecture them or so, but at the same time, we got to learn how to do it. And so when you're talking about the issue of being even-handed and being fair, and right across the country, that we have one idea as to how we're tackling this thing, it seems as if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and we're doing things haphazardly. Ad hoc might be a good term to describe it. And this would come even as that video arose yesterday. It was sent to me very early yesterday, of the Diamond Hospital, of what happened there. Now, we got several issues here, and sometimes, as reporters, we have to be responsible. We had it. I did not address it. I sent it to the relevant authorities. That's at the Ministry of Health. So the people are complaining. The guy that they were trying to break into the room where those doctors, there was a video that surfaced, if people are not familiar, that came from the Diamond Hospital where COVID patients are being held. And the doctors were seen on that video. They were in protective gears trying to break in. And it was very funny if you were looking at it, because you hear people shouting, and they were actually climbing the door on top of one to break it down. And then it was learned that one of the presidential guards that were tested, and he was one of them that was positive, is being held there, and he refused to allow them to put another person into the room, because he says that maybe he could be going negative now, and then you put somebody who might be positive, and then there's no end in sight. He's not going to be out of there. So he barricaded the door, and they tried to break it down. The person was videoing. The doctor saw him, and the video cut there, but I was told that they started scrambling on the ground. So the doctor, in protective gear, scrambling with somebody who might be positive on the ground. I'm not sure, but that tells me a picture, a scenario in which we're not very clear as to what some of these rules of engagements are when it comes to dealing with the people. So, Yog, many stories right across the country. We need to have a national sit-down.
Many stories, Leonard. Many stories.
We need to have a sit-down and let the authorities, the task force needs to be a little little more vocal than just sending out in WhatsApp group what are the number of figures. Oh, okay, today we have no more deaths, but we have 3 more cases. That's not
Right.
going to be good enough. We need to constantly remind. We need to hit the television station. We need to hit social media. We need to hit the radio stations.
Well, Leonard,
I don't know.
right, a couple of things there. One is that, well, two or three things. One is that the situation with regards to face mask. You mentioned that you spoke to somebody in the authorities about the persons, the cars. Were these private vehicles or public vehicles?
The taxis are operated as taxis or hire cars, I was told. And so
Correct.
they were at
And
one of
so,
the thing. Good. Uh-huh.
right, and so any space that is deemed public space, I mean, viewers and listeners ought to be advised, as long as you're in public space, you need to wear a mask to be compliant with our rules. And listen, wearing a mask, we went this over many times on this discussion. Leonard, we can get some finer definitions if needed, but private cars is a different matter. But as long as you're in a public vehicle, as long as you're in public space, as long as you're within 6 feet of another person that is not of your own household, you need to be wearing a mask. That's my interpretation of it so far. With regards to the
Go ahead.
with regards to the other factor that you raised there, Leonard, with that breaking down the door thing, I am advised by one of our medical persons that they at the hospitals, there may be only one way that you can be reasonably allowed to break down a door, and that is if it's a matter of saving a life. So that scene that we saw on those videos, they are chilling scenes. And I wonder sometimes why Guyanese get so high when they get a little bit of power that they forget that the rest of people that they lord over are human beings too. People need to be treated with decency, and people need to be treated on a case-by-case level, Leonard.
It is indeed true, and I at the back of my head, I'm always thinking too. We've been giving kudos to our doctors and nurses and other frontline workers. We had an ambulance driver or two a couple of days back that was on the program, telling us of some of his experience and how he's coping. And I'm a little hesitant to really judge because I'm not sure under what circumstances. What is totally unacceptable, of course, and I want to join with you, Yog, is somebody breaking down the door. Because if I tell you I don't want you in the room, you got to remember that these people, one man was held for 60 days. 60 days, you know what that is? That's 2 months. It's 2 months to stay at four walls, no television, maybe you would get internet. And there's a guy that is not too tech savvy, and he says, I don't have internet. I'd have to borrow somebody's phone. What do you do in 2 months behind four walls? In addition to that, on the flip side of that, what do you say to doctors and nurses who've been working round the clock, have been doing things beyond the call of duty, maybe putting themselves in harm's way? So it's really a touchy, a very sensitive situation, and I think the authorities have to be paying. I lay the blame strictly at the feet of the authorities, because you have to be engaged in these people regularly. People got to understand, yes, we are going to see some situations where certain decisions have to be made. Not talking to them, not engaging the public is totally unacceptable.
Correct. I agree with you. And Leonard, at the end of the day, one has to know that the people in quarantine, they have rights like any other human, like any other citizen of this country. And finally, I'll say this, that one has to ask this question, Leonard. We are under COVID-19. There is, I've said this a million times, I'll say it once more. The COVID opinion is a political group of persons appointed to serve a political purpose. Because for me, saying that it is not doing anything, it is not looking out for the best of.
So in the meantime, I think we have lost Yog there for a little while. The songs
paid by the people of this country. And so that's terrible, I must say that.
Mhm. And so, Yo, while we're talking with that and we're trying to make a connection with the mayor, Gifford Marshal there, very quickly, we have 5 more days before the clock ticks down on that 25 days. Do we see any possibility today of any decisions?
No, haven't seen anything as yet. No, and we could probably get into it after we get through with the mayor.
Right, right, right. But what?
Meanwhile, meanwhile, Leonard, just remember, just quickly, Suriname has its elections today. Today, the Surinamese people are going to the polls to elect a national assembly. Remember this body, the National Assembly, I think whoever wins in August, they are going to elect their president out of that process.
Yes, and you know what? What is going to be interested in that? I think Guyanese people should be sitting up and take notice of what is happening in Suriname. How soon could they have a decision, a declaration as to a new president or the incumbent being sworn in? How fast could that happen? I think that is going to be the biggest situation because at the end of the day, Suriname is like a sister country to ours. We have very, very close relationship with them via Barbies. We have thousands of Guyanese people living there who's been crossing the border. I think even between me, you, I think they got dual citizenship between them and Barbies, and not so much with Guyana, but Guyanese people got the dual citizenship between Suriname and
Correct.
Barbies. That's how close they are. So we have to, at the end of the day, pay very close attention because if they have a declaration within a week, and there's a new president. It tells us a lot of things, and we have to get our act together very, very quickly. There's nothing
Correct.
to laugh about. And so, Yog, I'd want to cut in here. I have with
Mhm.
us here Mayor Gifford Marshall. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, and I trust that all is well at your end.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Welcome to Kaicho Radio. I have with me here Dr. Yog Mahadeo, my co-host on this elections and COVID-19 watch, and I thank you for joining us there from Region 7, Bartica, a beautiful place. I like what you guys have done to it.
All right, we do appreciate it. You know, we are given a major assignment, and Bartica being one of the new towns, and we believe that the hinterland too is part of the beauty of this country, and the landscape and the geography and everything. You know, is just terrific. So we're just giving it our best shot.
Well, let me tell you this. I went there a couple of times in Bartica. One of the times that I would never ever forget was the
Uh-huh.
day when I woke up that morning and they said there was an attack on Bartica, and that was in the mid 2000s. And I think there were tears in our eyes in the newsroom. I could remember reporters were openly crying, and this was followed, I think, after Lusiknan, that massacre. And so I went down there, and it could not still take away from the beauty of Bartica there. And I know they would have done a lot of work since then. I saw the area, the beachfront area there, where or the riverfront area there, where they would have put all those little marketplaces, the vending places, and so on.
Correct, correct.
It looks, I think, on par with what we would see across another Caribbean island that has blue waters. So, and I think the regattas are something else to talk about there. So, Bartica is a place that is very special to the people of Guyana. If you've never gone there, take a trip sometime. It is all worth it. So, I'm
Well,
selling their place for you, Mayo.
well, thank you very much for that because indeed I love Bardic. I grew up here, and like you would have mentioned, that massacre. I mean, was a real, as the word suggests, massacre. Very painful to all who live here and those who are associated to us. But since then, the community would have moved on nicely. We are still heavily dependent on mining. So we have some challenges where the environment is concerned because our waters continue to be polluted. The land, of course, where mining is taking place, we have challenges there. But I think collectively and over time, we will be able to achieve our objectives. So let me just pitch this in here. I believe that Guyana is a beautiful country. And unfortunately, our attention sometimes we very, very get distracted quite easily. And it would be very nice for us to focus on our environment, focus on our country, put our country first, and ensure that we continue to build this beautiful land that God has given us. Whether you're in Essequibo, whether you're in the East Coast, Linden, Region 9, again, it's just a beautiful country. And what we try to do here in Bartica is put our tongue first. And we always say to the people, listen, this thing needs a collective effort. For example, if the municipality is going to spend resources on waste management, but the residents of Bartica will allow their cattle and so forth to be on the streets and tumble down the bins, then we will get nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a responsibility, while the municipality, while the elected leaders also have a responsibility, and together we can get there. So we're very happy for the support of all stakeholders, residents, government, even other municipalities, private sector, and so forth, and we will continue to work to build our town.
I thank you for that, Mayor Gifford. And so, sir, we're very interested, and that's why specifically that we wanted to hear from you today. Bartica is a very important place when it comes to the whole context of Guyana, and it is a gateway to the hinterlands, especially to the mining communities there, Region 7, Cuyuni, Mazaruni, big area, gold rich. And we know right now there's major issues with regards to COVID-19. Region 9, especially in our front page of Culture News today, it is that the Minister of Public Security is saying that a total lockdown of Region 9 possible if situation escalates. Yog and I was talking not too long ago, one mining area in Region 9, that is the Marudi Mountain. But we know that a lot of Brazilians are in Marudi, Region 9, in Cuyuni, Mazaruni at the moment. Is it a couple of days back you would have been coming out and talking about the first case in Region 7. So I want to talk to you about that specifically, and Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself are highly interested, and the rest of Guyana by extension, as to what kind of threat is being posed there, and what are likely some of the solutions.
Okay, well, first of all, when I spoke on Friday, I referred to the first case in Bartica. We would have had a number of cases in Region 7, more so in Aranco. And of course, it's of grave concern to us because based on the numbers that we have, 98% of the residents directly or indirectly depends on mining. That means that you actually have a relative, you have some business that deals with mining, and we also have persons who frequent the interior. And because of our geographical location, persons come here and then return to the interior for food and for fuel and so forth. So what is happening in the hinterland, of course, is affecting us. And of course, we know that this will cause some psychological problems, especially with the residents, and also it can cause some real strain on in the health sector. Bartica too, because of where we are, persons access communities close to the border and so forth. So when you look at it, it's the movement of people within the region. And Bartica being the administrative center, persons frequent here a lot. And it's of great concern to us because we're not sure if we'll be fortunate like the people in Georgetown. I notice despite the numbers, the people in Region 4, they're just busy going about their own business. So we are monitoring the situation carefully. And we too, like Region 9, will have to very soon, if the numbers increase, have to approach the National Task Force and definitely make some recommendations. But our plea to the residents is this, that we have a part to play. All of us have a part to play, and they also have a part to play. If you know that you're working in areas like Aranco and even those persons in Puruni and some other strategic locations within the interior, you have to put systems in place, first of all, to protect yourself. You also have to put systems in place to ensure that if you are at risk for some reason or the other, don't travel to areas like Bartica and even further go on to Georgetown. There are systems that are being set up by the National Task Force to meet those individuals where they are so that they can be tested and we can have a better hands-on approach of what is happening in the middle and upper Mars and so forth. But for now, we're very, very concerned with the developments, and we believe that every citizen in this particular case, residents of Region 7 and those who are working here, they have a responsibility to this crisis, and without their cooperation, obviously, we will not achieve our objectives. So I know it is tough. I know it is, it's a crisis we're dealing with, but we all have to bear that strain and work together.
I know that my colleague Dr. Yog Mahadeo would be highly interested as to compliance. And Yog, over to you, because he always is he's very concerned about compliance when it comes to people with a mask and so on. Yog?
Yes, Mayor, good to see you and good to hear from you, in fact. And a couple of questions for you. In terms of persons coming out from their homes, sir, persons who are emerging from their homes, the moment they emerge from their homes, in addition to that, the persons who are in public places, like the power company workers and so on, are they adhering to the advisory to wear masks and so forth?
The workers as such, the public service workers, whether with Guy or GPL, wherever you are, they're complying. But we still have too many persons who are leaving their homes to either go to the market or the store, or just sometimes they're just going to visit someone because they're not adhering to the stay home advisories, but they're leaving their homes without masks, and that is a concern for us. We have, however, most of the residents adhering to the advisories and the precautionary measures, but we have that small percentage that always ready to challenge any advisory or measure that is placed out there. So, in that sense, yes, we have a number of persons, especially they're working in the government system, complying, but they are not a concern. The set that is disregarding the measures is what is of concern to us.
So, I mean, are you? Is your township taking or planning to take any more stringent action? I tell you what. So, for example, Friday, Leonard and I we were fortunate to speak to one of your colleagues from Corriverton. And the Corriverton mayor said that for anybody to enter into the Corriverton market, whether you are a vendor or you are a buyer, you are required to wear a mask, or you're not allowed into the marketplace because their marketplace has certain entrances. How do you think implementing something like that is possible in Bartica?
No, we have that, and I think most of the municipalities, if not all, because we work together, we have those systems in place. But let's be realistic. On a daily basis, I don't think we have one in our case. We don't have 1%. I don't think the number of persons that frequent the market maybe on a daily basis, maybe 200, 250, 300 persons. And if you look at that in terms of the number of persons who live in there, you see it's a very small percentage. So you still have those persons who would go to other places, those persons who would attempt to go to the beach, go to the waterfalls, and those who just don't want to stay home, just hang out on the streets. So while, yes, we have measures in place, for example, you cannot enter our compound here at the municipality without a mask. The same thing goes to the regional administrative building. The same thing goes to the hospital and actually all government buildings. But there are other places, of course, that persons, especially men, choose to gather, and you will just see them hanging out without a mask, and that is the issue. And
do you feel that enough education was done for all the residents of Bartica, sir?
Yeah, actually, my social media page, for example, my Facebook page, on almost 3-4 times a week, I try to put information out there. The national.
But Mayor, you're presuming that everybody has access to the internet.
No, but we get now to another level. We have materials coming out from the National Task Force. The Regional Emergency Committee would have hired a truck, for example, and place a sound system as we know it on that truck to try to around the community making announcements. We use the radio. So actually what we try to do is tackle it from every angle. So it would be difficult for persons to say that, I don't know.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, the using of the loudspeakers and the bell criers, as we used to call them long ago, that's important.
Yeah.
Here is my last question to you. In terms of the poverty levels of people, not necessarily in the township itself, but in the outskirts, is anything being done to help people to survive if they cannot work or if they need help at this time?
Yeah, well, what we would have done at the municipal level is created a database to target those persons who, would have been directly affected by this crisis that we're in. And we see centrally they're doing something from it. I think it's the Ministry of Social Protection. And we have compiled that list, so we're going to reach out to those individuals. But I must say, Doc, I must say that I'm heartened at the response of the business community. They have, without our involvement. As a matter of fact, I cannot recall asking anybody directly. Maybe I would have just said it on the radio, but directly, you know what? Meet this need or not meet that need. But persons would have called me. I would have seen individuals who say to me, listen, X person gave me a hamper, and I'm so grateful. This businessman called me, and I received this. So those are the stories that don't reach to the press and don't be on social media that really, 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 touch our hearts. And we're so grateful for those who have meeting those, who are in need.
Right.
But let me say here quickly.
Yeah, go on.
We have, as a nation, we have a lot of conversations. We know we need to have a lot of conversations going forward. But this crisis reveals one. Too many of our people, too many of our residents, especially in the hinterland, are living like from day to day. So you're going to hustle, as the boys would say, and whatever money you make today is for today, and maybe tomorrow, and by the following day, you got to go and hustle again. So we have to have the economists on board. We have to have those conversations within our communities and villages, whereby persons must be able to be of such a financial footing that they're able to take care of themselves for an extended time, because so many things can happen to us in life that is unpredicted. So that is something that the municipality is examining, and we'll definitely start having those discussions as soon as this crisis is over.
Good. That's good. And here is another question for you, sir. Your township, your municipality, it's a gateway town. So a lot of people go through you. What level of risk do you envisage yourself being in because of that paradigm? So has the traffic through your town eased up, or it continues to be the same? And is it cause for concern?
It is cause for concern. And when we look at the numbers, because, for example, we have some screening points around the township, and it's amazing the number of persons who are traveling to Bartica, and some of them are continuing into the interior, but some of them are just staying here. And that's why when Region 4, their numbers were, we saw a steady climb in those numbers. We were seriously considering making recommendations to shut down the town for a couple of days, because the whole thing about it, if the virus is in a particular area and persons are moving from that area, then that's how it moves around the country eventually. So to answer your question, yes, it is of concern to us, and the numbers are actually growing. I think people are growing uncomfortable just being home, and they just want to travel to other places, travel and go and see family and friends. Some are going to work, and we've been seeing that traffic passing through the township. So we'll continue to monitor it and see how it goes.
Okay.
Yes, and so if you're now joining us, elections and COVID-19 watch, Mayor of Bartica, Mr. Gilford Marshal, is on the line with us here at Kaiser Radio. Mayor, I want to ask you directly. You say quite a number of those cases, the positive cases from Region 7, came from the Ranker area. Do we have any idea where they would have picked it up from? Is it that it came across the border? Do we have any idea?
No. No. I don't. I'm not sure if the National Task Force they have that information, but I'm just going to give myself the liberty as the mayor to just stretch my information a little further. the persons infected and those who, the movement of people, of course, we have persons moving from Region 4 to Bartica and going to Middle Maz and Upper Maz. In the case of Aranco, we have persons from almost every part of Guyana working there. So you have some village, I don't say villages, have some mining camps and mining areas that you have like strictly Bartica people. An export, you see like people from Pleasance and Buxton there and so forth. But the Aranco area is a little different. And unfortunately, in this case, you have also a number of government officers doing different assignments in those areas. So it may not, in some cases, it may not just be a minor. It could very well, it may definitely be, could very well be, somebody on assignment in the region. And because of their movement, sometimes it's a little difficult to trace to see where exactly they pick it up from. But all in all, right now we know that Aranca is a hotspot, and that's how we ended up with our one case here. And we're hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that the movement of people from that mining camp to the township will not negatively affect us.
So, Mayor, at this point in time, do you have any intelligence as to the number of persons, fresh faces, that would have come across the border, maybe from Brazil, from Venezuela, definitely from Venezuela, that would have passed through Bartica on the way to the mining areas?
No. We don't have, and that information is difficult because we do not have the capacity. And if you, I don't know how far in the interior you would have gone, but if you go like a point like Peruni and you see what's happening there, it's strange, and the movement of people it's not curtailed, it's not monitored at all. So persons can actually speak in our country and speak out. Persons, of course, move through our hinterland, freely. So I think over time as a country, as we continue to build our capacity in terms of our defense, we will be able to monitor better our borders and know the number of persons who move through. Bartica, like Charity, like Region 9 and Region 1, we've seen this increase in foreigners, especially Venezuelans and Brazilians. And I know the immigration personnel in those areas are working feverishly to ensure that those persons who are here, they're here legally. But there's always that group that, wants to beat the system. So it's not until something happens, maybe a crime happens in a particular area and the police force go after that individual or group of individuals that you get to discover a large amount of illegal persons and so on. So it's difficult at times to monitor that. But I think, like I said, we have a far way to go as a country, and as we develop, we'll be able to put a hand on that.
Do you envisage, if we look at our front page of Kaicher News today, Ramzan says total lockdown of Region 9 possible if situation escalates. Do you believe, based on what you're seeing at the moment, that that halting of gold mining in Region 7 is warranted?
No, it's not. And
would you recommend it?
No. I wouldn't. I will not. At this point in time, recommend that we halt mining. Mining is almost like our heartbeat, and that's what keeps the community going. That's what keeps families going. Now, I said.
But would you rate mining as an essential service?
It is, and according to the orders that we have, it's listed there, and any business that is associated with mining. But what I would like to recommend is that residents and citizens must understand that they have a responsibility, and the movement of people, that is what is affecting us. So if we're going to go in terms of a lockdown, I think the best thing to do is to have it across the board, nationwide. And in this particular case, I don't know if it will be just 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, or even 2 days, but persons need to understand that they need to stay where they are, and that's the best way in dealing with this virus. Because from Region 4, it would have spread to other communities. And unfortunately, the hinterland communities do not have the capacity in terms of human resources and other infrastructure to deal with such a crisis. All of our doctors and nurses and so on, a number of them are based in the city. So it's difficult for those of us who are in this part of the country. So restricting the movement of people is very, very important. But of course, we are cognizant of the fact that this too will have economic challenges and also social issues, especially with poor families. So it must be well thought through. It will have to be given much consideration, and we have to find ways in which we'll have to address, the needy among us. But we're hoping that the residents will exercise their responsibility, and in terms of staying where they are, and we will not have to move to that level.
So that's a dilemma, to close or not to close, shut down, partial lockdown, all kinds of stuff that we need to discuss. Yog, any other question for Mayor before he wraps up?
No, not at this time.
Thank you very much. And Mayor, so over to you. What would you say to the people of Bartica, to the mining area, the so very critical mining areas in Region 7, and to the people of Guyana by extension as one of the decision makers?
Well, to the people of Region 7 and more so Bartica, I would like to recommend and encourage all of us, to please adhere to the advisories and the precautionary measures. We all need each other, and I think what is important at this stage is for us to get through this crisis, together as a people. So we need each other. We need to continue to work together with all stakeholders to protect ourselves. And we will definitely have to hold strain a little more and, of course, stay where we are, because a stay-home advisory is very, very important in all of this. Of course, the hygiene measures is critical, and wearing masks also is critical. And I'm aware that countrywide, different organizations would have reached out and distributed masks. Some of them would have stretched themselves and distributed sanitization material and so on. Detergent, and we know that persons would have benefited from those, and we're just asking individuals to let us work together for the betterment of our country.
So I do thank you for that. That is Mayor Gilford, Marshal, Mayor of Bartica, that is, and he's joined us here on Kaicho Radio on the elections and COVID-19 watch with myself, Leonard Gildarie, and Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Mayor, thank you very much, and of course, as we wind down or we wind ourselves, meander along the roads of COVID-19, we'd want to come back to you at a later date to hear what is happening down in Bartica. Always a place that is very dear to my heart. And thank you very much, sir, for your works.
Well, thank you very much, too, and may God bless all, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you very much. And so, as we say goodbye, Yog, to the mayor there, Yog, some very interesting thing that's coming out there. I think I take note of your question to the mayor. I take note of your question to the mayor there with regards to the essential service that mining has been categorized as. And I'm a little mystified to that. I can understand the importance of mining to the bigger picture, to the economy of Guyana. It has been one of the biggest revenue earners, one of the biggest foreign currency earners for Guyana over the last more than a decade or so, overtaking sugar and, of course, staying ahead of rice. And so at this point in time, we'd have to ask as to when it comes to the protection of the residents, protection of the people, how far should we allow it to continue if it's being regarded as an essential service? The flip side of that, why is it being considered an essential service compared to some other maybe critical areas, maybe commerce? So
Well,
I'm a little worried.
The question needs to be asked across the board. I mean, let me ask you this. It might sound silly, but why is GRA an essential service?
Well, good question. They need to collect
You
the
know,
taxes. What's wrong with you, man?
but that's the point. But the man who has to earn some money to get a meal, his workplace is closed down because his workplace is not deemed essential. You see, the point is, you need to look at things across board. I'm not arguing about the right or wrong of it. I'm just drawing the picture here. one has to realize that the persons who work the mining pits, the persons who work the dredges and so forth, what happens when they go home? So all of those things needs to be taken in consideration when you're talking about this thing. Leonard, I just want to, if I may, the COVID-19 thing is there, and I just want to raise this perspective with everyone. Look, brothers and sisters, one of our very, very good, collaborative doctors just inboxed me to tell everyone out there, Leonard, keep an eye out for the kind of food you get when you're in quarantine. And do you prefer to go into quarantine to get that food? You better stay home and eat what you're getting at home, because that thing is not fit for consumption sometimes. So, Leonard, I mean, people have to take that into consideration. But here is another thing with regards to this COVID-19. And this is something I'm getting to a serious paradigm here now. I would want to ensure that at the end of COVID-19, the COVID task force and the members of the COVID task force are held responsible for everything, including the expenditures that they are authorizing, including the $1 billion expenditure for the Ocean View Hotel, including every other thing. Because you know what, Leonard? We are spending $1 billion on the Ocean View property, but we don't have PPEs in the country. We don't have, I'll share this with you. If you look at Brazil, Leonard, and you look at the amount of cases they have and the amount of cases to the population, and you look at the amount of tests, because the statistics show the amount of tests conducted. If Guyana were to apply the same metrics, over 2,600 people ought to have been tested. Now, what was the number you gave earlier?
1,557 persons tested as of yesterday.
You see how far away we are. So we don't know whether Guyana is on the move. As Dr. Mahadeo said to us a couple of days ago, Leonard, I wish to repeat this. You need to test a benchmark. You need to establish a baseline. So you need to test 500 persons every day for 4, 5, 6, 10 days. And that will form a baseline upon which the further tests are going to show whether people are increasing or decreasing. Until you have a baseline, you don't know where Guyana stands, whether we're going up, we're flatlining, what is the situation. It is, however, certainly worrying to one day wake up and see 8 more cases, not knowing where those cases are from, Leonard, not knowing whether it's Turkine, whether it's Diamond, not knowing where they're from and which part of the population is at risk.
Absolutely, dear Dr. Yog Mahadeo. If you're now joining us, this is Kaicho Radio Elections COVID-19 Watch with myself, Leonard Gildarie, and my co-host, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. And we've been with you more than 2 months now, coming to you every single day almost. Maybe a weekend off as we continue to bring you up to date on the election matters and, of course, COVID-19. And what is it that you need to know today? Today it's day 20 of the recount, since recount has started. And what we have right now is I think just more than 1,000 boxes to go. Yog, you and I would have to talk a little bit that. But what do we know so far? It's more than 80 days since elections were held on March 2nd. What we also know that today, Suriname, our neighbor in the east, has gone to elections as well to elect a new government. Guyana should pay attention to that and see how fast. Yes.
Leonard, what we also know is that Radio Nikeri in Suriname and all a few other stations, they are streaming the elections live, right? And what they have shown is opposition and ruling politicians, they are dancing together in the streets with the people. It's an amazing shift of paradigm, one border away. And tomorrow, maximum the following day, they will put us to shame because they would have made a declaration of their results.
And I would be very much ashamed if that is indeed the case. We could almost hope, and God forbids for Suriname's sake, that something happens that does not prove us right, that we should be ashamed of what has transpired, and as a people, we have to commit ourselves never, ever to allow it to happen again. So it is day 20, and of course, more than 80 days since elections. What we have with regards to the elections, the count is ongoing. Do we know how many more boxes within that 5 days that were supposed to be counted, Yo? It's just over 1,000, I think it is.
Yes, and one of the good news is Region 5, District 5 has been completed. We are going to wait for the tally, the totals, the certificate of tabulation to come out. But the good news I've gotten that Region District 5 seems to have been completed. And so, it's getting down to that point where I'm afraid it will be the point of no turning back when everybody is seeing what these results are. And so far, Leonard, region District 1 has been completed, District 2 has been completed, District 5 is now completed. And what it has shown is that the completed, the declared results from the certificate of tabulation, sorry, not declared results, but the statistics on the certificate of tabulations, this and the certificate of recount very, very, very closely match those discredited SOPs. Remember, GCOM refused to release its SOPs. APNO AFC refused to release its SOPs. But we have the SOPs from Kiter News, Tariff News, all the media houses, including what individuals publish, and they are closely matching those.
The $8 billion question, Yoga, I think we would probably have to go to $10 billion because we still have not ascertained the cost of what this recount would have been on the people's account, the bank account in Guyana. The people's account being the taxpayers' dollar. We have not ascertained whether we've gone past the $8 billion, whether the $8 billion have been spent already. We don't know a lot of things, but let's assume that for instance, that they're going to look after that. Let us ask the $1 billion question or the $8 billion question right now. What is the situation, or what is the decision taken, or none at all, with regards to how recognized will this recount be when this entire recount session is completed, if completed?
Well, Leonard, you and I will be having that exact discussion tonight in Room 592, right? The legitimacy of the recount, how long after the recount is finished for the results to be declared. We also going to get a lot of questions to our panelists, as you know, will be Chris Ram and Ralph Ramkoran. And we will be asking them some hard questions. Viewers and listeners, Leonard and I will be asking them, if there's so much anomalies as APNO AFC is pointing, can there be a declaration from those, from the knowledge that there are so many anomalies? So all of those things, Leonard, to your point and to your question just now, we will answer. I want to take you back quickly to the earlier thing you raised about the expenses. Remember, to get democracy going, this investment in democracy of $8 billion to get free and fair elections, for example, one might say, okay, it's a necessary expense. However, one must question the willful nature at which monies are being expended. I want to just put your mind to rest. Section 109 of the Representation of the People Act requires GCOM, requires the CEO to officially gazette the declaration of expenses after the elections are over. So that is mandatory per law, and the Guyanese people will see the true figure after the elections are completed.
Has any decisions been taken as to what GCOM is going to do with the objections or observations that would have been raised by the coalition representatives?
Well, there are differing opinions. I mean, you would have heard members from APNO AFC say that, these anomalies, these observations are huge. In fact, they have declared, I think Mr. Aubrey Norton was on television saying that these elections are rigged. I don't know how an opposition party could rig an election of which the incumbent is in charge. And it comes back to the question as to who controls GCOM, if GCOM is controlled by anybody. But to your question, it's something that we will certainly discuss and will continue to engage the discussions of people, because your question there is, would the observations matter in assessing and making a final declaration? Now, remember, Madam Chair said, he who asserts must prove, which means, in a way, in her mind, she is saying that if you point out these anomalies, you need to prove them, which means the GCOM may accommodate a discussion as to the validity of those observations. However, the gazetted order of GCOM does not contemplate in any clear way that the observations are going to form or are going to educate the declaration, so to speak.
Well, we'd have to see as GCOM would have to make those decisions and make it very, very quickly. I'm not sure. To me, it's very maddening that these decisions are taken at the 11th hour, and we should be getting these matters sorted out very, very early. But it seems as if we've taken it at the 11th hour, and we are on day 20. 5 more days to go. We have not been told whether they are going to have a number more days, which we should have, because I don't believe, based on the current construct that we have here, with just 12 compensations, that we're going to reach that. So we are expecting some major announcements with that. What we could also hear what we are also hearing is that today, or yesterday rather, Port Kaichuma Hospital, Mays Hospital there, the region has a brand new hospital. It's almost $1 billion, but it is going to be, they said it's one of the most state-of-the-art hospitals when it comes to what we have in this country at the moment. So that's a very good thing. Let's see how they put it in use, and let's see what happens. But Region 1 is a very critical area. Yog, 227-4410, that was a number that we gave to the people of Guyana last week when it comes to if you need some help. You remember last week that the authorities, the government came out and they said, look, we are going to ask people to apply now and state the condition, the situation, and where they need help. And of course, there's going to be some criteria. And so we would have given them the number 227-4410, which you call the government. That's a government number, and they would tell you whether you're qualified or not for whatever help that they're going to give to you. And so they compiling that list at the moment. So we want to hear from you, the people of Guyana, as to what exactly has been your experience when calling that number. I did try to call it this morning, but it seemed consistently busy. So our number here in the studio, let me remind you, 226-7453, 226-7453. And of course, you could WhatsApp us on 62222. There's already a caller online. Let's go to the air. Yes, good afternoon, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Leonard. Good afternoon, Mr. Yog Mahadeo.
Good afternoon, sir.
I, as a citizen of Guyana here, I'm very, very disappointed in how this election is going so far. On the 2nd of March, we exercise our democratic right. Today, we are being told, based on the information that is in our ears, which the coalition has lost the election, the government. What they are now doing is to pronounce Guyanese who would have voted on the day of the election. They are now pronounced Guyanese as dead. The first thing, when they do that, is an insult to Guyanese. Guyanese were able to exercise the democratic right on the 2nd of March. And now because they have lost the election, they are now pronouncing Guyanese as dead. That is an insult to Guyanese. While West, they are pronouncing Guyanese that they are dead. They have no evidence to prove their case, but they are now pronouncing Guyanese that they are dead. There's the second thing is that not only that, the secrecy of the vote of the Guyanese is now being exposed. Now look at this. They have to now investigate if these persons they are alive or they are dead. When they go to these persons now, when they investigate they are alive, now this person has been exposed. Okay, you ask them, who did you vote for? Either I vote for the coalition or I vote for the PPPC. Now, we don't know who will go into government. When they go into government now, and these very persons who expose themselves who they vote for has to go to government office to get assistance. We don't know what will happen if they're going to be vindictive because of who they vote for. This is not right. Guyanese have exercised a democratic right on the 2nd of March. It should be secrecy. And what is happening, and in the media, we need to put a stop to this nonsense. Guyanese are alive and well, and this nonsense that is going on is an insult to the Guyanese people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear caller. Yog, I'm not sure if you want to respond to that.
Um, Look, I mean, unfortunately, those are the pains of a democracy. Unfortunately, we have to face a couple problems. You see, to that caller, I would want to say this, Leonard. When you and I were having Safe Gun Raj and when we had Vincent Alexander, not everybody agreed with the questions we asked them. But you see, what we have to be appreciative of is that there are persons on all sides of the electoral divide or divisions that fully believe in what their leaders is saying. Well, their leader is another matter. Their leaders is another matter to assess their insult to the Guyanese population. But the truth is, my friend, that there are people across this country that firmly believe that dead people voted, that migrants voted, and all of that. And until you allow these things to be ventilated and dealt with in a public fashion, like what Leonard and I are doing here, people are not going to be satisfied that their cause has been heard. So sometimes, it's painful to go through these things. I must tell you, caller, I am not so concerned about people saying that the dead voted. I'm concerned that Guyana is a laughing stock to all the countries in the world presently. Everybody's laughing us. Whatever little bit of credibility we built up economically because we found oil, now it's totally lost in Nigeria.
Yes, and I don't want even want to go and use some of the words that I have to describe it, but I like to defend this country. It is my country. I'm very proud of it. There's a caller online. Yes, good afternoon, caller. You on the air?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. I'm calling to get on the show.
You're calling to get on to Kaicho Radio. You're on the air.
Who am I speaking with this afternoon?
This is Leonard Gildarie and Dr. Yog Mahadeo is my co-host.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm calling from Toronto.
Yes,
How are you
sir.
guys doing this evening?
This afternoon, we're doing pretty good. The weather's nice, beautiful. We're preparing to.
Well,
Uh,
we have
yes.
some sunshine today Toronto, so we're doing okay.
So go ahead.
Um, I I just would like to tell the Chinese people that this is what we have to go through in order for democracy to be served, then we have to go through it. Maybe this would be an eye opener to people that when they're voting, they should look at the possibilities. Like, I mean, we all know that dead people can't vote and whatever, but at the same time, it is wrong with what they're doing because there's no in none of the acts that says this that's happening in Guyana. All these anonymies are adding up, and they're saying now 80,000. Now that has to be put in the election petition after the election. They cannot go. GCOM cannot go now and say because of all these things we can call a re-election. It's not going to happen like that.
Well, several sides to the story there. Of course, the coalition would have been saying, well, we won the election, so put the election petition to everybody want the election petition. Yog, you want the election petition too?
Well, let the process determine that. I'm not going to comment on that now. What we have to recognize, Leonard, is that the process, uh, look, the decision as to whether the anomalies can be dealt with at GCOM level or not, you have heard, I think Anil Nandalal was here. We are going to deal with it tonight, certainly. And, it continues to be part of the dialogue here. But at the end of the day, Leonard, guess what? The decision is left to one person and one person only. Claude say.
So, caller, anything else you want to add? I think the caller is already left there. Yo, some interesting thing. I want to say hello if you're now joining us here to the people of Canada, to our Guyanese people living over there. Many thousands over this last couple of weeks would have been joining us, and of course North America, Europe, across the Caribbean. A good day, and of course my people here in Guyana, Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself say hello as we prepare to go to our 54th observations of the anniversary. And I think tomorrow they say they're going to have virtual celebrations. First time in all my years that we are actually going to be doing this. Yog, I'm not sure there's going to be a very surreal kind of feeling. What are you doing tomorrow for Independence?
Well, tomorrow I'm hoping to get some more food stuff shared out. But Leonard, tomorrow, guess what? I'm really glad you bring this up because tomorrow I want us to, you and I want to tell the viewers and listeners this. You and I will be talking to a former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yep.
So we're going to have a discussion with him tomorrow night in room 592, talking about where we have come from. This gentleman knows the history of the 1985 elections, the 1992 elections, all of those, and the roles that CARICOM and the Carter Center played in those elections. He knows, and he will be able to share with us some of those intimate details that many of us may not know or may have forgotten conveniently or not. But tomorrow will certainly be an interesting day because, Leonard, to keep up with the massive, impressive history that Sir James Mitchell has in his head, you and I got to do some serious reading up of our own history here to be prepared for an interview tomorrow night with him.
Absolutely, Yoga. And what would be interesting to me is how Guyana is being viewed at the moment across the region. I'm not even going to go international, but I know what the international stance is at the moment based on the statements that would have been coming out. But regionally, we've always had a soft look at each other. Trinidad would, they have a tongue-in-cheek kind of attitude to Guyana and the other neighbors when things happen. But in this particular case, we've been seeing some growing on diplomatic statements. That's because there's exasperation when it comes to the leaders of the Caribbean, of the region, to what is happening in Guyana. It's unbelievable what they would have been seeing more than 8 days and not a declaration as to the formation of a new government and, of course, the swearing in of a president. And so we'll have to continue looking at that. Yoga, I think there's another caller in line. Let's go straight to the air. Caller, you on the air. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'd like to say happy independence to all of Guyana in advance for tomorrow. However happy we can be virtually.
Virtually.
I look at I am looking at this thing from the law perspective. And the fact that it was gazetted in the order about entertaining objections means there has to be something that GCOM contemplated and doing with it, and not just put there for fun's sake and his re-election petition. That order was gazetted. Secondly, I can't understand how mining is a essential service, and the hardware stores in town where people have to work is not essential. And a lot of services that people have to do, and people in town don't have money, and nothing is being given to them as yet. But those services are not essential. I do not get it. If we're locking on this country, we're locking it down. Not some places have the will to do what they want, and some doesn't have. Barbicians are trying their best. Some of us in town are trying their best, but then you're telling me mining is an essential activity with a place that you cannot police properly with so many holes to get in. But that is an essential activity. I do not get it, and I think it's a shame as a Guyanese. So the people in town can't work at the hardware stores, but bush people could go for gold. We work at the store is essential because that's how we eat daily. So I do not understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think you, of our caller for the day, Yog, this call is spot on the money when it comes to, I didn't pay much attention to this whole mining issue, but of course the issue of even-handedness as to how we do things in this country, not ad hoc. When the authorities are making decisions and are recommending it for the task force to make the entire decision, Yog, it baffles the mind as to what that caller is saying there, what we all know in our heart. Such an area that is so very difficult to monitor. How do you allow it to continue? And look what is happening now. I believe, like what you would have said there, the number of tests that we have done is definitely not going to reflect to the number of cases that are there. And I am not a doctor. I'm not any technically thing person, but nobody could tell me that we don't have more cases than the 135 that we would have seen as recorded as positive yesterday. I rather believe it's much, much higher. And if you would have talked about the guy last week who would have been held in Region 9 after he tested positive, and he was held in Latam area, and he escaped it and ended up in Brazil next door. It opens your eyes and raises some very alarming questions as to what exactly did we do enough contact tracing across here. That's one.
Hmm.
And two, it raises that very big reality of the challenges to our borders, Yog. So we have to look back at this entire thing, not only mining, because you cannot, the guy is right, you cannot say to Georgetown and to Burbies, close your operations down. You cannot tell people to go in and keep curfew. That's why you see what happened on the seawall yesterday with people going out, because you have an uneven and not so even-handed approach to this entire thing. But here you
Correct.
have it here. You tell people to close down, and you have the back door, as I said, the side windows and the whole side wall open to things to happen in the mining areas. And that is
Hmm.
something I have a lot of friends in mine and dear friends of mine, and they're going to be very angry at me for what I'm saying. But it is something that the authorities need to look into. Your
Correct.
thoughts?
Correct. Correct. And Leonard, especially from the perspective that we spoke about, you cannot look at mining as a sector of revenue generation. You have to look at mining as a sector that employs persons from many different places in Guyana. And so those workers access, the ingress, egress in and out of the mining area and where they are from will become problematic unless you tell them, well, if you're working in the mines, you stay there until you're allowed. So in other words, you quarantine them or you isolate them to their mines. But we are not getting that type of information. So just saying it. Let's just say somebody from Diamond area is working in one of the pits or working on one of the dredges and comes home, Leonard. How would anybody in that area feel if they knew that the person was working the mines? So the caller is very right.
Yeah,
To the
right,
to the fir-
right.
to the first point that the caller made, I would like to just say this to you, sir. I agree with you. The order is there, and the order forms law as to what will be the fate of the observations. But, sir, 84.1 was law too. 84.1, Section 84.1 of the Representation of the People Act, that, Madam Chief Justice Roxanne George held that Mr. Mingo was in breach of following that law. In other words, the laws are there. Whether the officers will follow the law is the problem we have. We have had a clear case where one man decided, I don't care what the law says, I'm going to read it out from a piece of handwritten paper. And this is the question Leonard and I has asked of GCOM every day. What guarantees do we have as a people that this will not happen again? And all we are told, get patience with the process, which we have been exhibiting. So I take your point, caller, that the observations is entertained in the gazetted order, but sir, 84.1 is the law of this country, and that was blatantly breached.
Yes, I do thank you for that. And tomorrow happens to be our 54th Independence anniversary, Independence Day for us in Guyana. And we want to hear from you as to how your experiences has been calling into that number which the government has put up. If you need assistance because you have suffered because of COVID-19, last week we would have told you about that number, 227-4410, and the government is building a list of the vulnerable persons who need help. And so if you have called that number, we want to hear from you here at Kaicho Radio. What has been your experience, whether you've gotten through, whether you're able to register and so on. So there's a caller on the line. Let's go straight to the caller. Yes, good afternoon. You're on air, caller.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Leonard.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Yo. I like how you put it. Tomorrow, we'll be having our 54th independence anniversary. I think that is very right, because we cannot say we will be celebrating 54 years of independence, because we have nothing. I don't want to sound very negative, but I don't think we have anything to celebrate after 54 years if we cannot we cannot get the internal affairs right. I'm pleading with you guys, if you guys could maybe make calls so that whosoever can redouble the efforts at the border of Brazil because we see what's happening in Brazil, right? And another thing, I want you guys to educate Guyanese about the current election in Suriname. Today is the election in Suriname, and I want all the information where you guys can put it over. Let Guyanese see what's happening right in the neighboring there and what's happening here. For me, I would say I am 46 years old. I born with Coolie and Black, or Indian and African, right? And I live and I grow with them. And the situation where we are in right now, I think all we leaders fail us. Because we in this problem here, and every day you just hear people highlighting this problem. People just telling you more and more about this problem. Nobody ain't coming out and bring about and talk about solutions. We know what is the problem, but it's now we need to be mature and come about and talk about what are solutions. And I think solutions supposed to be working together. People need to remind Guyanese, I'm speaking Guyanese, not supporters of different parties. Remind Guyanese what we achieved so far as being together and working together. And I'm going to give you 2 examples, right? Going back to 2003. We have 2 Guyanese in the West Indies cricket team, along with Mr. Brian Lara. They batted and they scored 418 runs. Together they batted as a team. Guyanese, Indian, African. And we have that as a record currently up to now. The highest 14th test score in a test match. Now going back to 1975, my second example. And this one suits Guyanese because we have an African there, Mr. Clive Lloyd. And you have Mr. Rohan Kanai, an East Indian, 2 Guyanese, going to the crease at the West Indies at 50 for 3. And Mr. Clive Lloyd scored a century. Mr. Kanai scored 60 runs. They batted together. They worked together. And they put on a 149 runs partnership. And West Indies could have won that World Cup. And we created history. Guyanese do that. How they did that? They worked together. We need leaders to come out and elaborate and lament on togetherness, working together. We want solutions. We want more problems. We want more go sleep in the night with more problems from the chest. Tell me about solutions so we can think about betterment for tomorrow. So future leaders and aspiring leaders, we need one another. Whether we don't like one another, we need one another, and we have to work with one another. And that is my comment for today. Because it seems as if, as we're talking about cricket, it's like 2 teams playing the cricket. We reach the final now. The team that lose, he want to hold the trophy. He want a part of the trophy. He cannot be. You cannot cry that the scoreboard was wrong or something. All what you got to do, you come back next 5 years and you play again and hope to win then. You don't lose and be a sorrow loser. We got to change our perspective and the way we look at things. We got to work together, accept, and move on. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much, Zia. Yog, the man has me tearing up there, man. A lesson in life, a lesson in cricket. I really love your message, my brother. Cricket is so very dear to our heart, and your message has really hit home, at least to myself, as to the story there of Clive Lloyd and Rohan Kanai in the 70s and the role they would have played in that particular match. Well, let me tell you this. You're right. You're so very right. We have to look upon ourselves. We cannot do it without each other. And that is a lesson that has to be learned, that we'd have to take into our future when it comes to the development of this country here. Yog, I'm not sure what that message from that caller, but my friend, you've really hit home for me there, that point.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, we all must realize that we can work together. And unfortunately, Leonard, for 4 years on the trot, historically, we work together. It's on the 5th year of every cycle, well, a 3rd year in some cases, that we are told we cannot work together. And at the end of the day, what you and I have said, Leonard, is that the longer these elections go, and this is why we're impatient with GCOM. The longer these elections go, the more hate is being allowed to surface. And people are just calling out each other on silly things. So yes, we need to put it behind us. And, Leonard, the truth is that after the elections are done and declared, We're going to go back to business as usual. The politicians, 65 of them, are going to work to find a way to work together, regardless of the rhetoric over these times. The problem we have, and here is where the issue is, Leonard. The problem we have, to the brother's point, is what will stop this from happening again? It's a 54-year independent country that we have been having problems over and over. Throughout the Burnham era, there was massive rigging. That's history. Nobody can dispute that. As much as many of them want to rewrite that history, it is history. The CIA would have been putting money in the PNC's pockets. Go to the CIA website and you'll find it there. That's history. But unfortunately, it's not stopping. The rigging of elections, the rigging of the conscience of the society is not stopping until and unless, Leonard, we go to the paradigm you and I mentioned. We need to have an inquiry into who has been right and who has been wrong. We need to have an inquiry and we need to make some laws to stop certain things from happening. And Leonard, unless you hold some of these people who have breached the law responsible and jail them, it will happen again. Unless you do that, it will happen again. I will share this with you with great pride. In Sudan, viewers and listeners, in Sudan, $4 billion worth of assets of the former president Omar al-Bashir has been confiscated. The anti-corruption unit went in, confiscate how he could have accumulated $4 billion is another question, but it confiscated $4 billion of this former president's wealth and asset and movable and immovable property. That shows a seriousness of a country who wants to move on. Unless you hold them responsible, you cannot move on. Leonard, finally, I'll close that part with this. What happens to the man in the street? A man goes and he steals, he's jailed. He has to pay for what he has done. He has to spend time in the lockup. What happens to the elections official? Are they gods? Because unless and until we put these things to bed, there is nothing to stop it from recurring.
Man, and while you're talking about that situation there with Sudan, you would have seen, I think, New Guinea ex-PM Peter O'Neill arrested over corruption. He bought 2 generators and would have played around with the procurement aspect of it, or rather ordered it. So he is being held, and I think he was arrested and is being questioned over that. So nobody is about you might believe that you're above the law now, but things are changing pretty rapidly. The information age is here, and things that could happen up in some parts in the interior, they could get out here pretty quickly and become viral. So we know it's a different world, different place out here. I think there's a caller online. We are straight to, yes, good afternoon, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I on to Leonard and you?
Yes, you are. Kite Radio. Go ahead.
All right, Leonard. Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, sir, and lower the volume on your radio, please. Could you?
Justin, come here, Leonard. Yes, Leonard.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Winner takes it all, right? If I am the winner, obviously I got to take my trophy home. I heard people, asking if the winner takes it all is right. Why do you think in this case, Guyana's case, if Finale is the winner? I don't want nobody ask me how I know if Finale is the winner. Everybody can see that PPPC government is already the winner. The PPC party is already the winner. Understand? AP and UFC, they got a problem in counting. We know that from since the 62 divided 32 is more than half, and they can't see that. Right? Comprehension, they got a problem too, because I remember Madam Moxon George said that the unilateral appointment of Patterson is illegal. The president went and said that is her interpretation of the Constitution. Recently, Mr. Leonard Craig also mentioned that conclave, he doesn't know how you got it, but that is not his interpretation of the meaning conclave that you got from the dictionary. But I know PPPC is the winner, and he got to take it home because everybody voted, majority voted for him. Now, another thing, constitutional reform, and shared governance. I want to ask you and Leonard from the bottom of your heart, both of you, would you, if you was in Mr. Irfanali's position after swearing in, would you got the courage or got in mind to call these people from the opposition, the government side now, APNU government, knowing what they do, know what type of people they are, to recruit them with you to run this country? Tell me the truth from the bottom of your heart. Another thing, cricket. I would go with that gentleman, yes. We can work together. As Ms. Ifield said the other day on the radio, cricket time, we are one. Politician time, we are separated. But remember, election only come like once every 5 years. And then it's when politicians come. But the parents in their home have us every day. And if the parents can take a little time, they got the experience from the 60s and put it to the use. Because look at me now. I've heard, and I think it's what is his name? Josh Kanai. They say on the new movement was with Miss Ifield. He said that we are moving away from racism, and I think that is true because I've heard the youth of today saying it. This is not about a black man or a Kolima running this country. I've heard the youth saying, you know something, is that we've had enough and it's time for us to change. So we're going to change somehow. I think they've already learned what is it about, and they're going to decide, look, PPP will know and we can put them in. And if they can't do it, we can take them out. You understand? AP and UFC government know, this coalition know that when they come out, they're dead. We start, I don't know about nobody, but I already start writing the death announcement. So my call to ask you for some other information. Anyway, thanks for that. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, dear caller. Yog, I don't know, but what I could say to you, if you were to ask me, if I was the president, what would I do? What would Gildarie do? Let me make it very, very clear. When it comes to our representatives, when it comes to our leaders in Guyana, they are not leaders for the PPP. They are leaders for all Guyana. They're not leaders for the coalition or for TNM or TCI or whoever it is. They're all Guyana, and they would have to put differences aside. And if you want to be mature about it, you have to look at all Guyana. So if you were to ask me, I'm not sure if that time ever comes, whether I might have a change of heart. I'm going to say to you that all leaders at this point in time, we expect nothing less than for them to represent all of Guyana. Yog, over to you.
Leonard, you're touching on one of my spots here that caller has. Look, I firmly believe that he is right. Winner take all politics, and every single set of politicians has failed this country where inclusionary politics is concerned. However, one must give credit where it's due. I think that Chedi Jagan's presidency had extended and opened a lot of doors. And subsequent to that, they have done so. Now, the problem is as follows, Leonard. To that caller and to all viewers and listeners, I'll say this. Leonard, whoever forms the next government, unless they are ready to talk inclusionary politics, unless they're ready to move away from this winner take all, we are not going to have a future as a country because we're going to continue having these cycles all the time. So the next government has to look hard and long at the Constitution. However, Leonard, it is the people of this country that has to demand of the next government to ensure that they do not forget this thing. Look, brothers and sisters, the fact that APNO AFC supporters vehemently oppose a PPPC government means they have deep convictions in their heart that they will not be looked after, that their rights and somehow or the other, their rights may be trampled upon or something will go wrong. So people hold on to a belief, and that belief system can only change by exemplary action of a government. We can discuss all we want, but look, Leonard, the truth is APNO AFC has argued everything under the sun. From saying they won the elections outright to saying they're anomalies, they have argued everything except one thing, that they performed horribly. And the fact that the electorate has turned their backs on them shows that the electorate has decided they don't want them to continue. They're ignoring that part. They're ignoring that they closed sugar estates. They're ignoring that they closed things down. They're ignoring that it was good life for only a few. So, viewers and listeners, whoever formed the next government, you and I must not sit home and wait for the godly president to smile at us when he needs. We have to agitate, because always, whoever is in government, half of this population feels threatened. And until and unless we change our constitution, where we can have representation of the people in an even-handed manner, we are not going to move ahead as a people. And I can promise, Leonard, this is one of the things I foresee myself and others like me being involved in the future, to continue to agitate. These elections will come to an end, whether you like it or not. Somebody will be sworn in. Then is when the hard work starts. This here, what we got, is show off by some people who don't want to accept that they lost. Is an ungracious, ungrateful loser, sore loser. But the hard work starts when that declaration is made.
I agree, and I must tell you to our leaders, the leaders who is going to be in charge of government. And the government should not be the one that you say that you're a minister and the PS alone. The government would have to be inclusive of the opposition. There's no other way. We can't have any other way to run in this country, and putting it along a trajectory, oil and gas trajectory. So I think there's another call online. Caller, good afternoon. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I heard someone mention about essential service and essential job, right? I disagree, because my job mightn't be essential, but I'm going to tell you, my earnings is essential. My earnings is essential to me, and my earnings is essential to my family. So everybody's job should be essential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Yog comes back to what they would have said there about the mining industry, whether it's essential versus to what the gentleman would have said a little early, that first caller, with regards to Georgetown being closed, but yet you have, why is it that you have mining open? So very good point, sir. And
well,
everybody's
Leonard, the other thing too, the gentleman has a point, but the truth is that everybody, I don't know about you, I've received a lot of inboxes telling me GWI is reminding everyone they got to pay their water bill. What is the COVID task force doing to help ease the suffering of people? These people want to be in government so badly. What are they doing? Look, I will tell you this, Leonard, and I'm going to ask a rhetorical question here. Please don't answer it, Leonard. I'm going to leave it open. Here is what. One political party, I'm not going to call their names, one political party spent $34 million to employ Mercury. Another political party spent $96 million to employ JJ and BLLC. Here is where you can see the difference. Which political party has been up and down across this country, sharing assistance, sharing help, meeting people, talking to people, and give people what they need? Don't answer. But that's my concern at this stage.
Well, before we go to the next call, somebody is asking about the issue of essential services. This government has said that, and I think other authorities have said that the oil operations offshore is an essential services. Every night that I go home, I pass on the East Bank Road there by Magdum area there. I saw, I think it was Saturday night, I going home, and they had a vehicle that was coming out of Munishwar's wharf there, that offshore operations there, and they were turning on the wrong side of the road. That's because police has blocked the road for them to get down to the back of where the new Gafour's location is. I think there's some location at the back there. But the point is, Exxon is continuing to operate, and there's big operations going on. So the question is, how do you determine what is essential or not? We'd have to review. If we continue along the same route of having the country shut down or partially closed for another month or so, because many people are crying when you see people going out and you catch them on the road and they don't have a proper explanation, or say that when I'm looking for work, do you penalize that person? So there are many questions here, Yog, think there's another call online.
I also know,
Yes,
Leonard, just before you take the call, I know last week we were corrected by, we were thankful that one of our GWI colleagues had called us to say they were not sending out persons out there to disconnect people. I would like to call upon GWI to confirm or reject whether you are calling on customers to pay their bill. And, GPL too. I think you yourself, Leonard, was surprised at the total on your power bill. A lot of persons have expressed great concerns. Mind you, you have to take that with a pinch of salt because we are all at home and probably consuming much more power than we might have if we were at work.
Mm-hmm.
But Leonard, it's a crying shame that a government that sees itself as a government cannot do anything or say anything to ease people, because GWI and GPL are fully government owned, and they should really do something to help the people.
Well, I don't know about you. I could tell you this morning as I was about to leave home, the light bill came. I call it light bill, it's GPL bill or whatever you want to call it. And it's business as normal. It's business as usual. I'd have to pay that bill because I'm going to be cut off if I'm not. So there is a call online. Good afternoon, caller. You on the air?
Good afternoon, Gildarie, Yog.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Well, Yog said it well just now. The hard work start definitely when government going to it. They had Yog asking some questions about which surety we got in the tech government that some people won't go back into office, but it's only cut off. But nevertheless, this is Kaicho it's a great part in turning up the PPP government. I'm speaking as a Guyanese. They had an NIS building that spent $6 to $9 million in bodies. General was a nightmare to them concerning it. He even featured 6 or 4 buildings that he built for workers. Wouldn't even cost $7 million. But definitely, we need to get the system working to move away this stupidness every 4 years, every 5 years. People are easy, and we are moving forward till 2-3 days after. As you consistently say, when people get sick, they don't go, when the doctor says I get blood, they don't say, hold on, let me find out this blood. They don't care. Whenever a black person or a Chinese person touch anybody gets sick, they would give them anything they want in the government. This is absolutely foolishness. We got a senior lion in this country withdraw because, you know why? He was a part of remodeling the Constitution in terms of moving forward. When these idiots go into government, you know what to do? Put up their hand and refuse to move on. But definitely, the ones them that's speaking about bypassing Kaichor, they jump up people, and some of them don't know nothing. It's just rumors are going to. Kaichor play a great part in shaking the PPP government, and definitely we need to play a part in turning this Constitution around now. That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, sir, to that caller. And Yoga, before I bring you in here, I have some very pertinent points by that caller. Let me repeat, I can't stop repeating this. Kaichor News does not have a constituency or a party that it appeals to. It does not back any political party or any coalition. It does not have a constituency. We will continue to do our part. We will continue to bring the stories as they break, and wherever the chips fall, let it will. Yog, over to you.
Yeah, indeed. That caller is spot on. He has summarized it quite rightly. Brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, it's about us all. Leonard, I'll share one thing with you and the viewers and listeners. I remember I would say probably about 10 years ago, or maybe more, maybe like about 12 years ago. I remember I was driving along the road, going to work, and I saw the police. Police then had 3 young men out on their bellies at the corner of the road. And there were three Afro-Guyanese children, I would call them. And I remembered I stopped, and the policeman told me not to interfere. He warned me to get back into my car. And I remember that I stopped, and I said to the policeman, "Sir, if you stop 3 of my Afro-Guyanese children and you put them to lie down on this road here, you are creating a grave sin upon Guyana." The reason I raise that, Leonard, brothers and sisters, if you are an Indo-Guyanese and you are not offended when an Afro-Guyanese is taken advantage of, you don't deserve to add the Guyanese to your name. And Afro-Guyanese brothers and sisters, if you are not offended when an Indo-Guyanese or an Amerindian Guyanese or a Chinese, if any one of us cannot be offended when the rights of another person is being removed, then we don't belong to Guyana, we belong to somewhere else. We have to look out for each other. We have to hold each other up. We got to treat brothers and sisters. When you go into the shop and you buy your bread, or you buy your let's take, you go to Bakewell and you buy bread, the money you pay Bakewell is paying Chinese and Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese workers. You don't care. You get your bread. And they get their bread too. We have to look out for each other. Until we band together as a people, the politicians will keep this horrible cycle going all the time. Remember, we are doing all of this. We're going through all of this. And at the end of the day, all of us got to go back to work. All of us got to go back and look after our family. Whether the politicians look after you or not, you are in charge of your family.
Absolutely, dear Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Now joining us, of course, this is elections and COVID-19 watch. I think we could probably be able to squeeze in a call or two there. There's a call online. Caller, good afternoon, you're here.
Hi, Gildarie and Yog. Good afternoon to you. I'm calling from Berbice in the Bagdam in the Bari. Always enjoying your program, and your conversation there is excellent. And I would like to add my bit there.
Thank you,
in regards to what is happening in Guyana. I would agree, unless we can have where both sides will feel comfortable with the government, then that's the only time you will be able to eliminate or stop what is happening. Because it is clear that the PPP has won the election, but the other side is saying, no, we're not going to allow you in. Now we have to examine the whole, the thing as a whole. As I did this many times, and if we go back to 2015 election, who had caused the PNC or the APNU AFC to get into power is not their regular supporters. Is a crossover vote came mainly from the PPP side, but it's going to be impossible for it to happen the other way, because it goes back, from my understanding, it goes back for years and years and years, and this is what Burnham would have instilled in his people, and that's transferring all the time, and that they're not going to give up on this unless they prepare to break that link and cut that chain, the connection that they have there, because I think the only card that the APNU AFC can play, or the PNC, is the race card, and that's the only time they can able to keep their supporters. What they're telling their supporters is not right. They're telling the supporters, look, and I'm not a racist. I'm just saying it, say it as it is, how I see it. They're telling the supporters, look, the Indians is taking away what you should have belonged to you, and this is not right. This is not true, right? And unless we can get the Afro-Guyanese to understand this, and I think some of them understand, but most of them doesn't, because of what the leaders is transferring into their head. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. And the Barry, that's the West Berbice area there. A good day to you all if you're now joining us. I hope that the weather is good and that farming is good. Yog, as we wrap up, and before I hand over to you back again, let's just remind our people it's day 20 of the recount of the votes from March the 2nd. We have 5 more days before the clock winds down as to whether GCOM would make a decision. They're supposed to make a decision in terms of lengthening the number of days or having more counting stations, and they have not taken those decisions as yet. We have more than half of the boxes almost would have been completed or thereabouts. When it comes to elections also, we must tell you here from Kaicho Radio that Suriname has gone to the polls today, and we paying very close attention our connections with nearby Suriname, our neighbors on the east. And they would, we are going to pay attention from the fact that how soon is it that they're going to have some declarations there and maybe put us to shame And so that's not something that is easy to swallow. When it comes to COVID-19, 135 cases as of yesterday. We have 10 deaths so far. We have not had a death, fortunately, in the last couple of weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks. We would have had 1,457 tests conducted. But the big story here, Yog, is the threat to our borders, especially in the Brazil area, in the Venezuela area, because we know the growing number of cases in Region 7, big mining area, and so some decisions would have to be taken. It seems as if it is going to be very difficult to control what happens there if we keep the borders open and the mining as it is. So over to you, Yog, this evening. What's it that's happening today and tomorrow again?
And just quickly, Leonard, don't forget that Trinidad has done well. Trinidad's last COVID patient went home last week.
Yes,
they
I
have
saw that.
0 cases presently. So that is extremely well. Tonight, viewers and listeners, join us in room 592. We'll be having a look at some of your legal and other concerns with regards to this recount. So we're gonna have Mr. Chris Ram, as everybody knows, he's an outspoken, very respected person who he comes at the table with years of experience and years of being very outspoken on the Guyana scene. So Mr. Chris Ram, and he'll be joined by Mr. Ralph Ramkuran. We're going to be looking at all the questions we discussed over the past couple of days, Leonard. For example, is this recount legitimate, and what will happen to those observations? Is GCOM obliged to take those observations into account before making a declaration? And is GCOM obliged to use the recount to make a declaration?
And
so all of those and more, Leonard, you and I will be discussing with Mr. Chris Ram and Ralph Ramkuran tonight, 7:30 to 8:30, room 592. And tomorrow, of course,
yes.
I'm sorry, Leonard, tomorrow, of course, we'll have the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines joining us again tomorrow night, 7:30 to 9, more lengthier chat. Former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. James Mitchell, will be joining us tomorrow night.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Yog Mahadeo has made it happen. The former PM there is going to be with us tomorrow, room 592. And I want to say, take this opportunity until we meet again on this particular program here tomorrow at 1:30. I want to say for you to take the opportunity tomorrow, 54th anniversary of Guyana's independence. Let's reflect on it and what it would have meant to us, and let us endeavor commit ourselves back again to ensure that we have better government and demand better. Better must come, as one of my friends would say. So I want to say thank you very much and have a pleasant rest of the day. Elections, COVID-19, watch myself, Leonard Gildarie, and Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Pleasant rest of the day.